There is a silent yet lethal power struggle brewing in the Vesper Marches, and Baron Bishop Corbin realizes he has stumbled into the center of that political tempest. You see, Duke Brewer is an unwilling sponsor of House Corbin's expeditionary force. In the Duke's mind, any noble who volunteers forces or aid to House Corbin has outed themselves as the Duke's political rival. Because of this, the Duke is actively attempting to sabotage House Corbin and force them into a position of disadvantage, and at the same time, drain the resources of the Duke's supposed adversaries. The ill-timed ceasefire forced upon House Corbin was just the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Now that Baron Corbin realizes that the Duke is not on his side, the Baron is free to explore other options with other allies, and more importantly, House Corbin no longer feels the obligation to keep the Duke's ceasefire. House Corbin still flies the Vesper Marches flag, but the Baron wouldn't shed a tear if the Duke was replaced. So unbeknownst to the League, the Duke's control over House Corbin is deteriorating. It was only a matter of time before House Corbin attacked. In military decision-making process, there's a step called course of action analysis. It's a fancy way of saying, put yourself in your opponent's shoes, and from their perspective, how would you kick your own tail? It is an exercise to discover your own weaknesses and to develop plans to counter your adversary's strategy. Both sides analyze their opponents, but for this episode, we will just look at the League's analysis of House Corbin's situation. The least likely course of action is for House Corbin to attack the Azul Heath region via water crossings. Once upon a time, this was a major concern for the League. However, now the League has an entire galaxy of clan mechs and an entire mercenary regiment at their disposal. The League players feel that they could easily manage an attack in that region. House Corbin would be successful at making an initial beachhead at Hossy Vale and or Crimson Portal, but then House Corbin would be hard-pressed to maneuver and mass their forces in that region. But to counter this potential threat, a battalion of Provisional Guard was garrisoned in the region. The League also parked their low-orbit geostationary surveillance satellite over the town of Jasper Docks to keep an eye on those water crossings. The least deadly course of action was for House Corbin to do an all-out attack across the Landbridge region. This was their previous strategy for House Corbin, and it was effective, but only because the League's forces were outnumbered. The League believed that the conflict in Landbridge, if there were any battles, would likely revolve around controlling the town of Rutherford. That town has significant strategic value due to its water crossing access to Cobalton's city starport. To counter this potential threat, the League has spent quite a few resources building defensive fortifications throughout the region. Also, the entire Chupacabra regiment is deployed in Landbridge with the task of not giving an inch to the enemy. The most deadly course of action was that House Corbin would starborn assault the capital city. House Corbin has already shown with its successful attack of the La Peace power plant that the approaches were vulnerable. To combat this threat, the League spent a lot of resources building anti-air defenses at all the logistics hubs, the power plant, and even the non-functioning HPG signal tower. In fact, the closest House Corbin could land without being shot down by air defense was in the Pentabai Craglands. If House Corbin attacked there, within a few turns the League would be able to reposition the 1st Galaxy to defend the capital. But just to be on the safe side, 2 battalions of Provisional Guard were deployed to the region on the approaches. This brings us to the most likely course of action. House Corbin would commit themselves to the path of victory of attrition and forego taking the League's capital. House Corbin would conduct water crossings from the South Azure region into the neutral territory of Hazi Peninsula and capture the city of Sapphire Bay. By doing so, they would have acquired enough city districts under their control to start to erode at the Merchant Queen's patience for this conflict. Since that is the most likely course of action, you would think the League would deploy forces there. But the combination of the ceasefire and the signed neutrality agreement between Sapphire Bay and the Provisional Government of the League prevents the deployment of League forces to that region. The Viceroy is just not willing to take that political risk. Therefore, the only way the League saw that they would combat that course of action is by placing the 1st Galaxy's 4 clusters in each of the starports in the League-controlled cities. Once House Corbin starts their attack, a weakness would eventually show itself somewhere, and the 1st Galaxy would be ready to starborn assault and exploit that weakness. Well, the League was right. House Corbin was indeed going to break the ceasefire, and they were indeed planning an attack on the defenseless neutral city of Sapphire Bay, but not exactly how the League had envisioned it. Let's get this conflict started, beginning with the command staff actions of Strategic Turn 1. Remember, the command staff phase is done simultaneously and in secret from their opponents. Once both factions are done making their choices, then they will reveal that to their opponents. The League opted not to take actions with their engineers nor operations officers. However, the Fleet Marshal spun up 3 missions of aerospace assets. 2 wings of Visigoths were assigned with combat air patrol missions, and a solo was dispatched on a high-orbit reconnaissance flight, skimming the maximum range of anti-air defenses. The recon flight started above Welterkeep and flew southwest toward Griffinroth. Then it turned east, flying over Swinestone and ending their recon over the town of Azure Fell. The intent of this flight was to confirm their suspicion of an imminent invasion of the Hazi Peninsula. The players refused to fly over the Spellcombe starport because they had intel reports that House Corbin had rebuilt their air defense, which even at high orbit would have the opportunity to shoot down their recon craft. So imagine their surprise when they discovered that House Corbin had built a logistics hub with air defense systems in the town of Swinestone. The Aegis defense activated but failed to lock onto the solo, which escaped unscathed. Since the missiles were not launched, the ceasefire was still in effect. 2 wings of Eagles were committed to combat air patrols, and one of House Corbin's Picaroons was sent on a strategic strike missile against the League surveillance satellite over Jasper Docks. And with that strike, the ceasefire was officially broken. Hostilities have resumed. The loss of their satellite had a silver lining for the League players. For a brief moment, they thought that House Corbin had committed themselves to attacking Azul Heath, something that they felt they were well equipped and prepared for. But that moment of hope was dashed when the League received intel that House Corbin has deployed Pathfinders to an unknown location. The League's attention immediately snapped to the Pentabai Craglands, believing that House Corbin was attempting to assault the League's provisional capital city of Lapis, but they were wrong. Let's get into the action phase. House Corbin did not deploy their Pathfinders to the Craglands as the League had thought. They were deployed to the town of Lunamill. The Pathfinders established a temporary dropship landing zone, and House Corbin revealed that 2 battalions of forces have been sitting on troop ships in high orbit. From one of those ships, House Corbin deployed their 1st Battalion of the 2nd Regiment and immediately proceeded north to Easterwich. The League got over their initial surprise and began to take actions to box House Corbin into the Hazi Valley. The 1st cluster left the starport and moved into the town of Tortel Lane, trying to prevent House Corbin's forces from moving deeper into the valley. House Corbin deployed the 3rd Battalion of their 2nd Regiment to the landing site at Lunamill. In an attempt to disrupt any further landing operations, the League deployed one of their combat patrols, which was countered by one of House Corbin's combat air patrols. Since battles generally take 4 to 5 turns, the players had 5 turns of dogfighting in the skies above Lunamill, trying to gain air supremacy. None of the combat craft were shot down, but both sides suffered damage to their aerospace assets. In the end, the League successfully shot down 1 Aerodyne dropship carrying a lance of Shadowhawks, destroying all assets aboard. But the rest of the battalion successfully landed at Lunamill and advanced south into Inkroth. The growing threat to Hazi Valley was unexpected to the League. To answer this, the 4th cluster was activated and repositioned to the eastern part of Reston City, just to make sure House Corbin could not move further into Hazi Valley. But House Corbin marched into Sapphire Bay, uncontested by the local authorities, and took control of the starport. This was broadcasted all over planet-wide news, and so the League players were informed. At the same time, 2nd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment conducted a water crossing into Hazi Peninsula. This, however, was not reported to the League. The League didn't have any deployed Pathfinders to create a drop zone, so they did the next best thing. The 3rd cluster utilized dropships to move from Indigoville to Reston City Starport. House Corbin lands their 2nd Regiment's HQ at Midmail Starport of Sapphire Bay. House Corbin claimed the city for Vesper Marches. Sapphire Bay was conquered. House Corbin physically controlled the city, but not politically. Needless to say, the citizens of Sapphire Bay are very upset to have their neutrality violated and to be dragged into this war. House Corbin's forces continued to capture key locations. The logistics hub of Runikfur was captured by the 2nd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment. The League's 3rd cluster begins to rush southward into the Pentabai Craglands to try to control the western approaches into the Hazi Peninsula. Unaware that 3rd cluster was rushing south, the 2nd Regal Battalion of the 2nd Regiment moves north to hold the northwest approaches into the Hazi Peninsula. Eventually, the 3rd cluster and the 2nd Battalion got close enough for their area of operations to overlap over the town of Whiteloft. Oddly enough, in the combat phase, despite the growing tension in the Hazi Valley and the Pentabai Craglands, House Corbin did not launch any attacks there. Instead, they attacked Lambridge. House Corbin's 1st Regiment launched an attack at Hexawil and Rutherford. The Chupacabra's 4th Battalion, located in Limestead, deployed forces to defend both locations. It's a tall order for one battalion to fight 2 battles against 2 different battalions, but that's the design of the Chupacabra Battalion. We'll see if it works. Both sides committed their artillery batteries to the Battle of Hexawil. But since Hexawil is within the air defense zone of Smolderdam and Netherstrom Starport, both factions decided to commit their last remaining combat air patrol to the Battle of Rutherford for aerospace battlefield support. Both of these battles are happening simultaneously, but this battle report will resolve the attack on Hexawil. The next episode will resolve the Battle of Rutherford. So without further ado, this is the Battle of Hexawil. Welcome to the abandoned town of Hexawil, located in the demilitarized zone outlined in the ceasefire agreement. Let's have a look at the deployed forces, starting with House Corbin. House Corbin has deployed their 1st and 2nd Mech Company. Apparently, Madam B didn't want to risk her own personal guard in this initial attack. The 1st Mech Company is comprised of an Atlas Lance, a Warhammer Lance, and a Fire Support Lance with 2 Fafnirs and 2 Stalkers. The 2nd Mech Company is comprised of a Rifleman Lance, a Cougar Lance, and a Lance of Shadowhawk 2Cs. Supporting the attack is Alpha Company of the Heavy Infantry, which is comprised of 2 mechanized infantry platoons and 1 platoon of Inner Sphere Battle Armor Infantry. The Patreon Lance of Angry Mad Cats is also supporting this attack. Apparently, this is a lance of 4 Angry Mad Cats, Mad Cat Mark IIs to be exact. When this mercenary unit entered the Blue Hole system, House Corbin offered to the commander of this lance the title of Viscount of Frigid Cape, but only if he would commit his lance to the cause of House Corbin. The commander responded with "Meow," which House Corbin took as an acceptance of the offer and confirmation of their loyalty. The Chupacabras are deploying their 1st Heavy Mech Company. The company is comprised of a Highlander 2C, a Bloodkite, a Viking 2C, an Orion, a Daishi, a Devastator, 2 Tomahawks, a Thug, an Enforcer, a Quick Draw, and a Masakari. The Chupacabras also have their Heavy Mech Infantry Company defending Hexawil, which has 2 mechanized infantry platoons and 1 Lance of Maxim Hover Transport Mechanized Infantry. The Patreon force of the 86th Canopian Red Lights is also deploying. This company has a very interesting and tragic backstory. It is an armored company comprised of 8 Hetzers. 1 is a Jagdpanzer variant, and a Lance of Patent Tanks, with 1 being an Ultra variant. This all-female company is very motivated to fight on behalf of the Chupacabras, earning respect and C-bills. The Jefe feels sympathetic to their plight and looks forward to giving them the chance to gain more prestige and dignity. The Patreon member who had sponsored this unit has a much more in-depth backstory, and I encourage you to read it from his website, but I warn you, it is not for the faint of heart. Also deploying as the Force Recon for the Chupacabra's defense of Hexawil is the Rattletrap Renegades. This newborn force are veterans of the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces. This unit, which is indefinitely legally acquired metal, is a medium battle lance. These mercenaries are offering their services to the cause of Alyina Mercantile League due to personal concerns regarding the conduct and civility of the Vesper Marches and their leader, Duke Vedette Brewer. This is a very polite way of saying that they didn't exactly agree with the idea of all of Tamar seceding from the Lyran Alliance, but they really didn't like the welcome they got from LCAF Command when they headed home, so they struck out on their own, a la the Second Grey Death. The lance is comprised of a Wolverine piloted by Lieutenant Natalie Kelswa, call sign Rivet 1, a Crab piloted by Sergeant Lucian Davies, call sign Rivet 2. It also has a Hatchman piloted by Corporal Alicia Singh, call sign Rivet 3, or Miss Chop Chop as the Chupacabra player calls her. And this lance also has a Sentinel piloted by Corporal Riley O'Bannon, Rivet 4. Since this is the first battle with the new rule system, I'll take a little bit of time describing some of the rules so you get the gist of what's going on. This is a contested location, Therefore, the battles begin with the advanced recon lances from both sides entering into a skirmish. The recon lances will have 2 turns of maneuvering and fighting to gain momentum for their army. The 2 armies gain momentum for each unit that's within 12 inches of the map's center point, as well as inflicting damage upon their opponent. Whichever side wins the skirmish, they will gain the advantage for deployment, as well as decide the number of turns for this battle. The 2 armies are unaware of what their opponent will deploy for their reconnaissance unit. For the Chupacabras, they selected the Patreon force of Rattletrap Renegades as their force recon. House Corbin deploys their first platoon of their heavy infantry company, believing their mechanized infantry will have the speed to move along this road and take the center of the map. The skirmishers are ready to deploy, but one last thing I want to do before we kick off this conflict. I want to give a special thanks to all the Patreon members, and to notify you all in a noticeable notification of 3 new notable nobles taking up the noteworthy noble cause of supporting the channel, and has thus been denoted as notable nobles of the channel. Thank you Pit Viper 375, Kevtor, and Grand Loser. All of you have our undying gratitude. House Corbin has the initiative for the first turn of the skirmish because they are the attackers. The Chupacabras will need to move and shoot first. The Rattletrap Renegades deploy on the western side of the map and ground move into cover of that road sign. They are not yet close enough to exert control over the capture zone. House Corbin's platoon of mechanized infantry deployed in the east. 1 squad of infantry are mounted aboard each of the 2 deputies. They are not yet close enough to capture the zone, but they are closing in as well. For the shooting phase, the deputies are still at long range to the Rattletrap Renegades, so only the Crab has line of sight and long range weapons. It opens fire with a target number of 9. It hits, dealing 2 damage to the deputy's armor and earns the Chupacabras 2 momentum points. The deputy did not suffer a motive check, but unfortunately both deputies cannot return fire since they are not armed with long range weapons. For the second and final round of the skirmish, the Chupacabras have the initiative, so House Corbin will move and shoot first. The mechanized infantry move into cover of that building and dismount their troops. From that position, the entire recon force is within the capture zone and with a bit of cover. The Rattletrap Renegades ground move forward. They are left out in the open without cover, but they have line of sight to the entire recon force of House Corbin, and most importantly, they are within the capture zone. House Corbin opens fire. The entire platoon targets the Wolverine at medium range with a target number of 8. House Corbin hits, dealing a total of 3 damage to the Wolverine's armor and earning 3 momentum points for House Corbin. The Rattletrap Renegades return fire, splitting the fire between the 2 infantry squads and the damaged deputy. Unfortunately, the Hatchetman missed, but the Sentinel hit one of the infantry squads and dealt enough damage to wipe out the entire squad. The Crab and Wolverine fired at the deputy and hit, dealing a total of 3 damage, removing the last bit of the armor of the vehicle, and again the deputy passed its motive damage check. With shooting complete, the skirmish round is over. House Corbin earned a total of 12 momentum points. However, Rattletrap Renegades earned a total of 17 momentum points, winning the skirmish round and gaining an advantage for the Chupacabras. Since this is a contested town, then this is a capture key terrain scenario. Both factions place potential capture points at key terrain that is a certain distance from the center point. I call these potential capture points because the players won't know until the end of the first turn which capture point is identified as the key terrain that needs to be captured to win the battle. Since the Chupacabras have the advantage, House Corbin will need to deploy first, and their entire army is deployed within 4 inches of the map's edge. After House Corbin deploys, the Chupacabras deploy their entire force within 8 inches of the map's edge. The Chupacabras automatically have the initiative for first turn since they won the skirmish round. House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. Let's get into turn 1. Since the Chupacabras have the momentum, they also get the initiative for the first turn. This means House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. House Corbin activates his Angry Mad Cats and ground moves forward. House Corbin wants to see how the Chupacabras will commit their forces. The Chupacabras activate the Rattletrap Renegades and they ground move into cover, keeping a line of sight on the center capture point. House Corbin activates his infantry company. The dismounted infantry moves into the building and takes up firing positions. The vehicles ground move into cover behind some trees, and the other platoon moves down the road into cover of those buildings. The Chupacabras activate their infantry company. The platoon ground moves into the neighborhood and dismounts their troops. The other deputy platoon ground moves into the residential zone and also dismounts their troops. The Maxim hover transports move to just on the other side of the center capture point building and dismount their troops. House Corbin activates his first mech company. The entire mech company ground moves forward. The Chupacabras activate their first heavy mech company. The Viking Lance ground moves forward out into the open, but there is a copse of intervening woods to provide cover. The Masakari Lance spreads out, utilizing any building they can find for cover while at the same time maintaining a line of sight down the main avenue of approach. The Tomahawk Lance ground moves into cover, reinforcing the Rattletrap Renegade's position. House Corbin activates his last mech company. The Rifleman Lance moves up behind the Angry Mad Cats. The Cougar Lance moves to capture Point C. They are carrying 1 unit of battle armor each into this battle, and the battle armor dismounts. The Shadowhawk Lance jumps 18 inches, landing on top of the center control point. The 86th Canopian Red Lights activates, and the ladies drive their Hetzers into the open field behind the residential zone. Their mission is to dissuade House Corbin's Shadowhawks from jumping in behind the Chupacabras. The Patton tanks creep forward, staying directly behind the Viking Lance. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The Rifleman Lance and the Angry Mad Cats open fire, all targeting the Highlander 2C. The target number ranged between a 7 and an 8, and under all that impressive firepower, a total of 25 points of damage was inflicted, which was enough to destroy the Highlander. The Atlas Lance opens fire on the Masakari, who is at long range, behind cover and some intervening woods. Therefore, the target number comes to 11, and they all miss. Warhammer Lance all opens fire on the Masakari, but since there's no woods intervening, their target number is a 10. Using lucky points, they were able to score 4 hits and 1 critical hit. But with the critical damage roll, the player rolled a 5, so no critical damage sustained. But that house didn't make it, nor did that tree. The Cougar Lance, still trying to take out the Masakari, opened fire with a target number of 8 and 10 since half the lance is medium range and the other was at long range. Using lucky points, they were able to take 2 more points of armor off the Masakari. One of the Shadowhawks just barely had line sight of one of the Hetzers with the Jagdpanzer variant, and opened fire with a target number of 9, but they missed all their shots. The Stalker Lance, the 2 deputies, and one of the Shadowhawks takes aim at the damaged Wolverine and opens fire. Target number ranged between 8 and 9. They ended up dealing 11 points of damage, and under that amount of firepower, the mech was obliterated. But before Rivet 1 ejected, she was able to return fire. House Corbin's battalion artillery was within range. They fired at the infantry in the residential zone, but the rounds splashed harmlessly. The rest of House Corbin's forces didn't have any targets because they were out of range or no line of sight, so the Chupacabras returned fire. The Viking Lance and the Patton Tank Lance split their fire between 2 of the Mad Cats. Target numbers ranged between 7 and 8. Using lucky points, they were able to do enough damage to take out both mechs. The Hetzers of the Red Lights and the Deputy Fighting Vehicles opened fire on one of the Shadowhawks. The target number ranged between 8 and 9, and they were able to deal 3 points of damage to the mech's armor. The Masakari Lance opens fire on one of the Cougars. The target number ranged between a 9 and 11. Using lucky points, they dealt the mech 7 points of damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. The Rattletrap Renegades, seeking revenge for their fallen leader, opens fire on the Shadowhawk with a target number of 8, but they were only able to inflict 4 points of damage to the mech. The Tomahawk Lance opens fire on the Fafnir in the wheat fields. Target number ranged between 7 and 9. They scored 13 points of damage against the mech. This wiped out all the mech's armor and did 3 structure points of damage. This caused a critical check, and it's an ammo hit, but because it has case, it only sustains 1 more point of structure damage. Trying to put more damage on the Fafnir, artillery was called in, but it missed and splashed in front of the mech. This brings shooting to a close. The Chupacabras lost 2 mechs, and House Corbin lost 3. Since turn 1 has finished, we roll to see which of the objectives are actually eligible to be the key terrain and needs to be captured. And it was a 2, so only 1 objective is activated, and that is Objective B, which is already firmly in the hands of the Chupacabras. The Chupacabras had a very lucky start for this battle. We'll see if that luck runs out or not. On to turn 2. Now that the key terrain has been identified as the capture point, let's take a quick tactical pause and consider the strategy of the players. The Chupacabras already have the key terrain in their possession. Our plan is to hold that position and protect the flanks. House Corbin wants to condense his forces to the middle and push hard along the southern flank, and have the infantry move in once the area is cleared of Chupacabra mechs. That was their basic strategy. Let's see how that plays out. House Corbin won the initiative, the Chupacabras will need to move and shoot first. The Chupacabras activate their mechanized infantry company. First Platoon's infantry move into the apartment buildings, taking up fire positions, while the deputies move into cover. Second Platoon's infantry remount the deputies, who then scoot across the road and troops dismount in the square. Third Platoon's infantry move into the manufacturing facility, while the Maxims move into cover, putting pressure on House Corbin's north. House Corbin activates their second mech company. The Shadowhawks jump to the southern part of the map and into some cover of the woods. Both the Cougar and Rifleman Lance advance forward. The Chupacabras activate their first mech company. The Quick Draw and Enforcers stand still. The rest of the Masakari Lance and the Viking Lance ground move into cover behind some buildings, bracing for House Corbin's assault. The Tomahawk Lance ground moves forward, moving towards the center of the map. House Corbin activates his heavy infantry company. First Platoon attempts to take the hold down action and pass. It reduces their TMM to 0, but it also reduces their target number by 2. Second Platoon, with the infantry still mounted aboard the deputies, moves into cover of that farmhouse, waiting for an opportunity to be called forward. The battle armor infantry move into cover. Eventually, they will be part of the assault to capture the key terrain. The Chupacabras activate the Rattletrap Renegades. They ground move into cover behind the manufacturing building to add their shooting to protect the flanks of the key terrain. House Corbin activates the Angry Mad Cats, who ground move and mix in with the second mech company. The Chupacabras activate their last unit, the 86 Canopian Red Lights. The ladies of the Patton Tank Lance have no fear. They ground move forward and establish a fire line in the open, facing off against House Corbin's mechs. The two Hetzer Lances are ordered to begin to reform on the main road. House Corbin activates his last company, the first mech company. The Atlas Lance continues to ground move down the road towards the Chupacabras. The Warhammer Lance and the Stalker Lance continue to ground move in the north, trying to exploit the Chupacabras' defense since they are all massing in the south. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. The Chupacabras will shoot first. The Chupacabras in the south divide their shooting between the two Mad Cats of the Angry Mad Cats Lance. Those mechs are just too deadly and they have to go. Target number ranged between 7 and 8. That was 41 points of damage being thrown at those two mechs. Not all of them hit, but there was quite a lot that did. One Mad Cat was destroyed. The other had its armor stripped off and sustained 3 points of structure damage and critical damage to its weapons. However, the destroyed Mad Cat can still shoot back this turn. Next, the Rattletrap Renegade, Sentinel, and a few of the deputies opened fire on the damaged Shadow Cat. Target number was between 10 and 11, but despite the high target number, the Sentinel landed a hit, removing the last of the mech's armor. The Tomahawk Lance and the Rattletrap Renegade's Crab, as well as two Maxims, split their fire between the two Fafnirs, hoping to take them both out. They scored hits, but not enough to destroy the mechs. The damaged Fafnir took 4 more points of damage to its structure, leaving just 1 point left. It also suffered critical damage to its fire control. The other Fafnir took 12 points of damage. This wiped out its armor and caused 2 structure damage and critical damage to its movement. The Hetzers were at long range of the Atlas Lance, but they could see the severely damaged Shadowhawk, and they opened fire with a target number of 10, and they were able to score 5 hits, which was enough to destroy the mech. Hetzers got a Hetz, man. Last up, the infantry exchanged ineffective fire with the battle armor. The Chupacabras called another artillery strike against the severely damaged Fafnir and nailed it. This removed its last structure point, and that mech was destroyed. House Corbin can now return fire. His battle armor and all the mechs in the south split their fire between the Viking, the Masakari, and the Blood Kite. Target numbers range between 7 and 8. That was a lot of incoming damage, but it was split between 3 targets. The Masakari was destroyed. The Blood Kite received 10 damage. This wiped out all of its armor and did 2 structure points of damage, but not any critical damage. The Viking took 16 points of damage, but that's one tough mech. It only has 1 armor point left. However, one of the hits against this mech was also a critical and took damage to its fire control. The Stalker and Warhammer Lance all take aim at the Devastator out in the open. The target number was a 7, and they completely annihilated the mech. Artillery was called down on the Blood Kite, but it missed. And this brings shooting to a close. The Chupacabras lost another 2 mechs, with 2 more taking quite a beating. House Corbin, on the other hand, lost 3 mechs. The Chupacabras still hold the key terrain, but House Corbin is closing in. Let's get into turn 3. At the beginning of turn 3, the Chupacabras, since they are the army with the momentum, can choose to end the game at the end of turn 4 or turn 5. The Chupacabras do a quick assessment of their situation. In total, House Corbin has lost 6 mechs, but still have 22 mechs on the battlefield. The Chupacabras have lost a total of 4 mechs, but only have 12 mechs and 1 armored company left on the battlefield. House Corbin might win this battle the longer it goes. Therefore, the Chupacabra player chooses to end the battle at the end of turn 4. The clock has started. House Corbin has 2 turns to overrun the capture point and take the key terrain from the Chupacabras. The Chupacabras won the initiative, so House Corbin will move and shoot first. House Corbin activates their first mech company. The Atlas Lance continues its slow advance up the main road. The Stalker Lance advances into the cover of woods. The Warhammer Lance forms a fire line directly behind the Stalker Lance, ready to sweep the north of all Chupacabra forces. The Chupacabra player activates her first mech company. The Quick Draw and Enforcer take the hold down action in their positions. The mechs in the neighborhood are giving up some ground in favor of cover. The Blood Kite jumped into cover and the Orion falls back to a better position. The Viking and Thug take the hold down action behind some poor soul's house. Despite losing their TMM and reducing their damage, the hold down action will give the mechs a better defensive target number. The Tomahawks and the Daishi maneuver to get clear shots at the Stalker Lance while trying to get defilade from the terrain as much as possible. House Corbin activates his infantry company. 2 squads of battle armor infantry jump into position to stack on the entrance to the manufacturing building in preparation to assault the building in the next turn. The other 2 squads advance into cover. The infantry in the admin building leaves their position and advances across the field with the battle armor. 2nd Platoon leaves the cover of the farmhouse and moves forward. The deputies in the hold down position stay put. The Chupacabras activate her infantry company. Ignoring the threat stacking at the entrance outside the building, the troops inside remain in position to engage the enemy mechs. The infantry in the square move into fighting positions within the apartment complex. The deputies in the square all take the hold down action. The 2 Maxims in the north did what hovercraft vehicles are meant to do. They scooted all the way around into the wheat field, lining up wonderful shots at the enemy's rear arc. The House Corbin player activates his 2nd mech company. The Shadowhawk Lance jumps into position to try to counter the Maxims, while the rest of the company advances on the destroyed neighborhood in the south. The Chupacabra player activates the 86 Canopian Red Lights. The order is given to advance both lances of the Hetzers down the road. The Patton Lance ground moves into the ruins of the neighborhood and use the remainder of their movement to take the hold down action in the wreckage of the house as well as the downed Masakari. House Corbin moves his last remaining mech of Angry Mad Cats right behind his advancing 2nd mech company. The Rattletrap Renegades find themselves at the center of the 2 vectors of the attacking enemy, stand still to engage the targets as they come around the corners. I just want to take a moment to appreciate how the battle is unfolding. The Rattletrap Renegades, holding the map center, are in good position to add their firepower against both enemy columns. The 86 Canopian Red Lights are throwing themselves in front of the Chupacabra Mech Company in a desperate attempt to hold off the southern attack. While on the other hand, the Patreon unit of the Angry Mad Cats, down to their last mech, is reinforcing House Corbin's southern attack with its deadly weapons. Let's see what happens. On to the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The House Corbin player had a difficult choice to make. You see, infantry units are outstanding at capturing key terrain, earning more tactical points with their short capture range. The Chupacabras had 4 infantry and 4 vehicles and several mechs close to the key terrain. His infantry was closing in, but he would need to clear out the Chupacabra infantry first. And this brings us to House Corbin's dilemma. Does the player commit some of his shooting to the infantry in the buildings, or deal with the clear and present danger in front of him? Since the battle's going to end soon, he decided to have his 3 Atlases attack the infantry-occupied buildings, and all 3 buildings were obliterated. And the infantry inside, well, they didn't make it. The remaining Atlas, the Angry Mad Cat, and the Cougar Lance and the Rifleman Lance split their fire between the Viking, the Thug, and the Blood Kite. Both the Blood Kite and the house it was using for cover were destroyed, though the mech will be able to return fire this turn. The Thug took 11 points of damage. This took out all of its armor, removed 3 structure points, and caused critical damage to its movement. The Viking was one tough and lucky mech. It took another 5 points of damage, removing its last armor and doing 4 structure damage, with critical damage to its engines. Surprisingly, the house wasn't hit once. The Stalker Lance and 2 Warhammers focus all their shooting on the dice sheet. Target number was a 7, and the mech was destroyed. The remaining 2 Warhammers opened fire on the Tomahawk in the woods with a target number of 7. They hit it, dealing a total of 6 damage. Next, the 2 hold-down deputies and the Shadowhawk Lance opened fire on the 2 Maxims. One sustained 3 damage, removing all its armor. The other takes 7 damage, which was enough to destroy the vehicle. The battle armor rakes the Chupacabra deputy with laser fire, dealing 4 damage to its armor. Fortunately, it didn't suffer any motive damage. Annoyed that the Viking just won't blow up, House Corbin calls artillery down on the mech, striking it and dealing 1 damage, which critically damaged its weapons. The Chupacabras returned fire. The Sentinel of the Rattletrap Renegades, the entire 86 Canopian Red Lights, and elements of the Viking Lance and the Masakari Lance split their fire amongst House Corbin's 2nd Mech Company. The last of the angry Mad Cats was destroyed, followed by 2 of the Cougars, and the Rifleman was hit with a critical that outright destroyed the mech. 4 mechs were destroyed. That was devastating to House Corbin. The Stalker Lance had blundered. They are within range of the SRMs of the mechanized infantry, using their dead fire ammunition. Combine that with the Rattletrap Renegades and the Tomahawk Lance, as well as a pair of Maxims firing at the rear arcs, the Stalker Lance was in a world of hurt. They split their fire between the Fafnir and the Stalker with target numbers ranging between 7 and 8. The Fafnir was destroyed. One Stalker took 10 points of damage, leaving 2 structure points and suffering critical damage to its movement. The other Stalker took 7 damage, one of which was a critical hit to its engine. The Chupacabras called in artillery on one of the severely damaged Stalkers, but it missed, landing on its fallen comrade. And that brings shooting to a close. The Chupacabras lost 3 infantry squads, a Maxim hovercraft, and 2 mechs, and sustained a lot of damage. House Corbin lost 5 mechs, with 2 Stalkers in pretty bad shape. The entire Patreon Lance of the Angry Mad Cats has fallen. Ouch. Let's get into the last turn of this battle, turn 4. Turn 3's shooting did not go the way that House Corbin had hoped for. The Chupacabras at the capture zone have been softened up, but the Chupacabra mechs in the south are still standing, which means they will be shooting again this turn, and House Corbin is already concerned that they have already sustained too many losses. Ultimately, Hexawill is a nice to have, but not strategically important enough to lose more mechs and equipment for. So even though House Corbin is in a good position to win the battle, he would prefer to fall back, repair, and strike again another day. The Chupacabras won the initiative, so House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. House Corbin activates his infantry company, and they start to fall back into cover. The deputies exit their hold down position and pulls back. The infantry and battle armor fall back into positions of cover, and the 2nd Mech Infantry Platoon pulls back into cover of those trees. The Chupacabra player activates her infantry company as well. The deputies and infantry remain in place, holding the key terrain. The Maxim hovercraft scoots away from House Corbin, trying to get into cover of those woods. House Corbin activates his 1st Mech Company. The Atlas Lance falls back, but it wants to make sure it's close enough to their allies just in case the Chupacabras do a last-minute charge and try to capture and apprehend some of his forces. The Warhammer Lance and Stalker Lance pull back, still scanning for any targets in the north. Unfortunately, one of the Stalkers had damaged movement and could only go half speed. It was the Chupacabra player's turn to activate one of her units, and she made everyone jump when she suddenly screamed out when she realized that she had a grand opportunity. You see, the Patreon Lance Rattletrap Renegades wanted to have the 1st mech successfully use a melee attack. Unfortunately, that was claimed by the Top Hat player on Archer Sierra. But the Chupacabra player thought she could maybe one-up that by being the first to successfully destroy another mech with a death from above attack. I was like, are you sure that Rivet 3 is insane enough to do that attack? I mean, she would be left exposed to a lot of angry Warhammers. The Chupacabra player said, oh yes, Miss Chop Chop is crazy enough for this. I mean, look at the Patreon member's name. It has the word annihilation in it. So the Hatchman with jump jets on full burn comes screaming out of the sky with the hatchet held high. The Stalker is crushed to the ground and the Hatchman slams the hatchet into the fuselage of the Stalker. The Hatchman is now completely exposed, but from the canopy you can see Corporal Singh giving an inappropriate salute to the Warhammers as she prepares to eject from her mech. The rest of the Rattletrap Renegades stand still, maybe out of shock at what Rivet 3 just did. House Corbin pulls their 2nd Mech Company back from the neighborhood. The Shadowhawks, on the other hand, jumped to the north side of the map to put some fire on the meager Chupacabra forces still in that area, including the pesky Maxim, and enemy number 1, the Hatchet Man. For proportional movement, the Chupacabras activate their last 2 companies. The 86 Canopian Red Lights activate. The Patent Lance stays in their hold down positions. However, the 2 Hetzer Lances push forward to continue to harass House Corbin's forces to make sure they don't change their mind and come back. The 1st Mech Company activates. The mechs are in the hold down position, remain in that state, while the remnants of the Tomahawk Lance sprint into cover. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase, in which House Corbin will shoot first. The Shadowhawks and what was left of the Stalker Lance, the Warhammers, all split their fire between the Maxim, the Hatchetman, and one of the Tomahawks trying to get cover in the woods. Needless to say, the Maxim was destroyed, and the Hatchman was obliterated. But as Corporal Singh ejected from her mech, she turned on her external Vox speakers and yelled some parting remarks, just in case if the Warhammers missed her earlier hand gesture. Because of her valor and her insanity, Miss Chop Chop earned herself the highest military award in the Chupacabra Mercenary Force, the That'll Do Medal. Congratulations, I guess. The battle armor and infantry squads open fire on one of the Hetzers, dealing enough damage to take out the poor Hetzer. The crew successfully evacuated, but will need a prolonged stay in the hospital. The Atlas Lance and the remaining elements of the Cougar and Rifleman Lance split their fire between the Viking, Thug, and Orion. The Viking, the Thug, and the houses they were hiding behind were all destroyed. The Orion took 6 damage to its armor, and perhaps out of spite, House Corbin called an artillery strike on the Orion, and it hit, removing the last of its armor. The Chupacabras and their allies returned fire. The Hetzers blasted the battle armor in the industrial park, destroying 1 squad. The rest of the Red Lights and 1st Mech Company took aim at one of the Atlases with the hopes of bringing it down. They dealt it 16 points of damage, with critical damage to its weapons, but the Atlas survived the barrage. And finally, the Rattletrap Renegades and the rest of the mechs in the north took aim at the Shadowhawks. Even with the combined fire of the Crab, Tomahawks, and the Thumper artillery, they were only able to inflict 3 damage to the already damaged Shadowhawk. This left it with 1 structure point and critical damage to its engine. With shooting complete, the battle comes to a close. The League forces, comprised of the Chupacabra 1st Mech Company, the 86 Canopian Red Lights Armored Company, supported by the 4th Battalion's Heavy Infantry Company and the Rattletrap Renegades, have successfully defended the town of Hexawill. House Corbin lost a total of 12 mechs, 1 battle armor, and 1 mechanized infantry squad. Unfortunately, the entire mercenary lance of Angry Mad Cats was also destroyed. However, during the admin turn, House Corbin will have the opportunity to bring some of those mechs back online, but resource allocation is limited. The Chupacabras lost 9 mechs, 3 vehicles, and 3 mechanized infantry squads. Due to losing the momentum during the skirmish, bad luck on the key terrain selection at the beginning of the battle, and some unlucky shooting dice, House Corbin ended up with a bad engagement and a loss. But both sides had some lessons learned from their first battle. The Chupacabras learned that House Corbin's standard 1st Mech Company is a slow-moving freight train, and the 2nd Mech Company is all about maneuvers. House Corbin learned that they needed to rethink their strategy for the skirmish round to gain momentum. House Corbin also noted that the Chupacabras have a lot of expensive mechs, and they are assuming that the League's galaxy also has expensive mechs. Those resources were reallocated from somewhere, so perhaps the League Provisional Guard is either few in numbers or comprised of cheap or not well-trained troops. A theory that will need to be tested. The next battle will be for Brotherford, a town that both sides have identified as strategically vital to their victory. Well, I hope you enjoyed this battle report. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.